struggling to recover his valuables from a river in which he almost died. Nearly 12 hours earlier, Nick Stolp says it was here he was hit by a wall of water. He only survived by clinging to a nearby tree. He could only watch helplessly as 5 others were carried away by the flash flood.
It's starting to get clear that I was very lucky. I don't know really how it went by too fast. I'm just unfastening my seatbelt, jumping out the window. I was still looking for 1 second for myself and realized it was a lost case, so I just jumped out and decided to just get out of there. It was pretty crazy.
Heavy rains across South Africa have left a deadly mark. The government has now declared more than 24 flood disaster zones. Residents of this settlement were forced out of their homes by heavy rains in the night. The people living in this area say the water came with such force, and it was actually knee-high. It literally swept everything in its path. And you can see their damp clothes. The floors are still wet, and they're still trying to come into terms with what happened. Some have no choice but to live in muddy houses until it all dries out eventually. And as the rain clouds gather again, the threat of flash floods has yet to ebb away. Radisson Deroge, Al Jazeera, Ivory Park, South Africa.
And I'm Vida Fakhri with the headlines on Al Jazeera. More than 500 people have been killed by floodwaters and mudslides in southeastern Brazil. It's being described as the worst natural disaster in the country's history. Raging torrents have cut off entire areas and driven 14,000 people from their homes. Australia's government has doubled the number of soldiers deployed to the country's flood zone. Though most of the floodwaters are now receding, officials say it could take years to rebuild Australia's third largest city, Brisbane. At least 15 people have been killed and 55 are still missing.
As drivers whiz by the Huntsville-Browns Ferry Road exit on I-65 North, specks of black in the stark white snow are pretty hard to miss. Upon a closer look, you'll see that there are scores of dead black birds.
And these are common grackles. Look at this.
I called out wildlife biologist Bill Gates of the Wheeler National Wildlife Refuge.
What we want to do is see if there's any external signs of damage or why it might have died.
Gates says feathers like these scattered across this area point to signs of trauma.
If something happened to scare them up, and they tried to fly across the road in a flock, a semi or something like that could have hit them.
But to be sure, Gates is collecting samples to send off to the National Wildlife Health Center in Wisconsin. Scientists there will run a battery of tests to determine exactly what killed the birds, just as they've done recently when thousands of dead birds were found in at least 4 other states.
Typically, large numbers of birds die from disease, from poisonings, and from being hit by objects or flying into objects. And really, you can't roll any of those out until the birds are examined.
Well, stories about dead birds in several parts of the world are still making headlines. The bird kill in Arkansas is on almost everyone's radar. No, literally, it actually shows up on radar. New at 10 tonight, KTV's Lauren Clark joins us now to explain. Lauren?
Well, as today our own Ed Buckner pointed out, an interesting image from the radar screen taken New Year's Eve above Beebe when the birds fell. We took it to the National Weather Service in North Little Rock to see if they could give any more information about the spot.
There are some indications that we're picking up a non-precipitation target, has some similarities to, say, like a collection of birds.
This radar image is from around 10 p.m. New Year's Eve. Science and Operations Officer at the National Weather Service, Chris Bonanno, tells us Arkansas had lots of busy weather that particular night, but nothing after sunset.
It's not uncommon to see actually birds on the radar, especially in the spring and the summertime.
He estimates this spot to be between 1,300 and 1,400 feet above ground and points out how it doesn't move as most clouds or rainstorms would.
When you see a higher reflectivities, that's indication of a stronger or higher energy being returned to the radar. And in weather instances, usually the higher reflectivities indicate very heavy rain or perhaps hail.
And the bright color is just too strong to blame it on bugs or smoke. But Arkansas Game and Fish officials say witnesses told them the birds were flying low that night, hitting everything from cars to mailboxes. So while we know what it's not
precipitation occurring,
the National Weather Service cannot definitively say what it is.
And the Weather Service here in Little Rock even fielded a call from a TV station in Germany about this radar image. Liz?
Hello everyone, welcome to Global Government News. Today is Wednesday, January 19th, 2011, and I'm Darko. New listeners, please visit my website at www.ggnonline.com. That's ggnonline.com. So, you just saw some videos about the weather in Brazil and Australia, the floods, and in Africa. And those aren't the only places. I think weather's been pretty hectic or unusually wet and snowy and cold, but all around the world. So we're going to move on to these dead birds and dead animals that are being found worldwide, because it's, they had the turtle doves falling out of the sky in Italy, and I think there was fish in Sweden or Norway. So we have hundreds of steers mysteriously turn up dead in Wisconsin. It said in the latest of string of mysterious animal deaths taking place across the globe, Portage County, Wisconsin Sheriff's Department recently issued a press release about 200 steers that were found dead on a farm field in the town of Stockton. Preliminary tests by the owner's veterinarian showed that the steers died of atypical interstitial pneumonia, AIP, but authorities reportedly also sent samples to Madison for further testing. So this is weird, because they turned up in Wisconsin and they're sending these samples to Madison, and that's what we just heard. The individual from Alabama, the representative for the Department of Fish and Wildlife, say they were going to be sending their samples to the dead birds that they found on the side of the roads to Madison. So it's all going to Madison, and now all these steers are turning up dead in Wisconsin. There's all kinds of theories out there. I'm not going to go into them because I've already posted a video about it. But it seems like nothing could be rolled out as far as any kind of chemicals at Rainier or HARP type technology. I was almost thinking that it kind of sounds as if the birds were avoiding something, and in doing that they flew so low to the ground that they started to run into things. And obviously, like they said, feathers falling out is a sign of stress. They weren't injured. And then you look at the fish that were killed, a massive fish die-off. I think it was like I said, somewhere in Scandinavia or in Europe, and they all had like these weird they look like crap. The fish just look like crap. They had like these kind of mottled lower jaws that were all swollen and red. And so, yeah, it's just a lot of stress. And God only knows what it is, if it's a natural occurrence due to the North Pole moving, some kind of electromagnetic field, or just, basically HARP technology. But either way, we're going to move on here. China toll dodgers' life sentence is dropped. And this was on the news, and I actually covered this before. It says a Chinese farmer and gravel dealer who was sentenced to life in prison for evading more than $560,000 in highway cargo tolls by using fake military license plates has now avoided the harsh punishment as well. After a public outcry about what was deemed harsh treatment and widespread grumpiness over high tolls in general, state media said Wednesday that authorities have overturned Xi's life sentence. And then we move on, because I actually caught this article, and from the People's Daily Online while I was looking through news articles for my videos, and I saw this: highway toll fees set to decrease. And I'm like, whoa, when did you ever hear that? Toll fees are set to decrease. Nothing ever gets repealed. Just like the healthcare bill, you just got to shoot another puppet representative, and then what happens? Oh, sorry, we can't vote on the healthcare repeal. So it's like they said in the Rush song, when you have a government, these changes are permanent. Doesn't go away. It says highway toll fees will be made more affordable nationwide as the Ministry of Transport will gradually introduce a stable and cheap charging system, as senior officials said on Tuesday. And I just want to point out, though, every once in a while you will get a little trickles of liberty. And I don't call it freedom, because it's only freedom because the government allows you to have it. So that's called liberty. And so some things will happen, like up in Wisconsin, they repealed some gun laws so you can carry firearms. And it makes sense, because I didn't even know Wisconsin had a tough gun ban until they mentioned it. I'm just like, it's Wisconsin, dude. They're out, most of them are like outdoorsmen, survivalists, fishermen, hunters. How the hell are you going to have a gun ban there? But I have been there, and they are liberal. Even in like the little towns that have cottages where you go and rent your fishing boat and go fishing, basically for people, for tourists. But so let's move on here. It says here, states sin taxation as salvation for budgets. I like how they call it sin tax. It says it could cost a good deal more to be bad this year. Cash-strapped state lawmakers across the country are looking at raising, quote, sin taxes on everything from traditional vices like smoking, cigarettes, and inhibiting or imbibing alcohol to more recently vilified habits like drinking sugary sodas and hitting the tanning salon. So there you go. In Mississippi, state rep citing the state's place at the top of national obesity ratings is sponsoring a bill that would add about 25 cents in new taxes to a can of soda. So here we go. Again, Alabama traditionally would be, Mississippi would traditionally be, and Alabama would be considered more of a conservative state. They were Democrat, but everything got flip-flopped around, and now they're considered conservatives, Republicans. And so you'd be like, well, why would they do something like this? This is not free market at all. But it doesn't really matter. So it says here in New York, State Assemblyman Brooklyn Democrat wants a new fat tax. And he says a surcharge on the purchase of sweets and snacks. In Maryland, dozens of state lawmakers are getting behind a plan to raise $200 million revenue with new taxes on beer and wine, but in the face of strong opposition from the state's business community. I was just listening to WBBM News Radio AM here in Northwest Indiana, and it comes out of Chicago. If you're local, you know that, but it's a Chicago AM news radio station, and they were just basically reporting on a proposed, another $1 increase in the cigarette tax. So I think most people in Chicago right now are paying about $10 a pack for cigarettes. And right now they're facing $11 a pack, and of course they say it's justified because it's going to help people not smoke. So, but don't worry about those people that do want to smoke. You're screwed. I don't know what they're going to do when eventually they ban smoking. Where are they going to get a tax from? Or if people just stop smoking because they can't afford it anymore? What are they going to tax you next? That's what you have to realize. That if they can tax that, they'll tax anything. Even the air that you breathe out or breathe in, as long as they can get revenue. So it doesn't really matter. Indian villages bans mobile phones and wearing jeans. A caste council in India's northern state of Pradesh has ordered girls to be banned from wearing jeans and using mobile phones. The council says objectionable clothes invite unwanted attention for girls. So I'm not sure if they're going to actually have some kind of ticket where you're going to get fined, where they're going to have fines, or if they're just going to cut their hands off or their heads off or whatever, stone them to death. Dad banned from kids over excessive homework approach. Surprised to see this, because why? Well, it's totally supported by mainstream media. They took this dude's kids away because, well, he wanted them to succeed and get into a private school. So it says father pushed kids to study excessively. It says court rules dad was too iron-fisted with kids. Oh, see, the state ruled. Dad banned from future parenting decisions. Oh, okay. Father obsessed with children's education has been banned from parenting decisions because he's too iron-fisted. So there you go. Freedom in decline worldwide, says U.S. report. Says global freedom declined for a fifth straight year in 2010 as authoritarian regimes dug in worldwide and crime and unrest unplagued democracies like Mexico. So it talks about China, Egypt, Russia, Venezuela, and let's see. Let's see. I'm looking for anything that mentioned the U.S. here, but they're not in there, so we must still be free. Okay, I'm glad I checked. It says Iran's fuel blockade strains relations with Afghanistan, prompts protests. So this is the last article I'll cover for this video until we bust it into part 2. A protracted fuel blockade by Iran sparked protests in Afghanistan for the second day in a row Sunday as tensions rose between the Islamic neighbors who share a long border and complicated history. So you can join me in part 2 of this news bulletin. This is GGN and I'm Darko. Thank you.